Hot flashes, sleep disturbances, mood swings, intense sugar cravings. The journey through midlife, as you know, can feel like we are navigating massively uncharted waters. What if I told you that some of the answers to some of our most challenging midlife symptoms can be steeping in your own kitchen? Yep, maybe in a cup of tea. In a world of quick fixes, pharmaceutical solutions that might sound hard to believe, but for centuries, some women have turned to plants for healing. Now, before there were any pills for all the problems that we face, there were plants for every purpose. Today's conversation is with herbalist Kita. She's going to be revealing with us how ancient plant wisdom is meeting modern women's health, from inflammation to cortisol, brain fog, most importantly, sugar cravings. She's got it all. Thank you so much for being here today, Kita. Can't wait to dive into this whole conversation.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Now, you have formed this incredible company. I'm sipping on it right now. But there's a whole backstory to this and how you figured out about herbs and tea, and specifically, can you take us a little bit through your journey? I want people to understand how far you've come and where this even came from.
Oh my gosh. I have always loved plants all of my life, but when I was young, I believe I had hypoglycemia and nobody knew. And I was addicted to sugar. I was allowed to eat whatever sugar I wanted to eat. This is back in the 60s and 70s.
Yep.
So there's no real guardrails on that. And so I grew up with like a constant yeast infection and thrush and skin issues, acne. And then later on, in my teenage years, I started becoming addicted to other substances. I started drinking alcohol at 16 and started drugs a couple years later. So my life was really out of control.
You were so young. You were so young when you just said that. That's why I think of that. My daughter's 17. So boy, that resonates.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I was already like a full-blown addict and, all of that at a very young, before I was legally allowed to drink.
Wow.
So I just had a lot of stuff going on. That's a completely different story, but I did not have the coping skills to deal with it. And my body apparently wasn't processing sugar properly either. And that'll, kind of play in later. But my life continued to spiral down over the next few years until I found myself in a lot of legal trouble. I was arrested and ended up serving time for as an accomplice in a drug-related offense. And it was in prison that I finally started to get my act together, and it wasn't because of any programs or anything like that. Those are, really super minimal. But I met a woman who became a mentor to me, and she saw something in me, and she was, very spiritual and kind of like a medicine woman, even though she didn't use that.
And you
term.
met her she was in prison that you met her, so you met her in prison. Oh wow.
Yes, I did, and we became very close. She took me under her wing, and she started to introduce me to the healing powers of plants. And she also said to me that she thought that I probably had hypoglycemia for most of my life. And she described the symptoms. I had never heard of it before, but she described all the symptoms of, dizziness and shakiness and feeling lightheaded and just really out of balance. And that described my whole life. And that, when I would, how it is when you get hangry, it's because your blood sugar is low.
Well, and I do think there is a correlation with the sugar connection and that feeling of needing it. And what you just said, addiction. This is not uncommon that you'll hear somebody that struggles with addiction also struggled as a kid with sugar.
Absolutely. It's like your gateway drug, and it starts so young. And I do want to talk about that a little bit more, how deep our psychological connection is with sugar and why it's so hard to kick. But anyway, when I started to learn about the healing plants, it really started to transform my life. And so I started becoming healthy. I started learning how to respect my body. I cleaned up. Like the last time I did any drugs or alcohol was in 1986. So I never have gone back to it because I have embraced a whole other way of living. And so I made a commitment to learn about the healing plants and then share what I learned with the world. I had no idea what that was going to look like, but it totally transformed my life. And so I got out of prison in 1992, and I was still like really trying to figure out how to live as an adult because, when I was out before, I had never really held a job
And you were a kid when you went in. I mean, you were really, truly a kid.
In my 20s. Yeah. Early 20s.
That's still very young.
Yeah, it was. So I had to really learn how to function in the world. And because I had learned about managing my blood sugar, I learned, okay, I need to have snacks with me. I need to have something that's going to keep my blood sugar stable so that I can function and not flip out during the day. And I continued to try to figure out, how am I going to learn about these plants? And then a couple of years later, I discovered an herbal program, an herbal education program. And it was exactly what I was looking for. So I enrolled, and again, it transformed my life. My life has had a series of transformations, and I knew that this is for me. Yeah. Yes. And so it was, a little longer than a year. It was pretty comprehensive. There was science as well as the herbs. So it wasn't just, drink chamomile for this. It was we learned a lot about the compounds that are in the herbs. We learned about just how to balance them, how they interact with our body.
I think of supplements, and so many supplements are based on herbs, but people don't tend to know why or the science behind that or how that came to be. But most supplements, if you look at ingredients, I mean, that's what you're going to see is a list of things. And they are medicine. They are a way to really change and fix things, but they can also hurt us if we're not doing things the right way with them. I've understood.
Exactly. Yeah.
You brought up about sugar a minute ago. I want to circle back to that because sugar is a huge topic. And you said that it goes a lot deeper in there. Share with us what you learned about that and how that correlates and why this is such a huge epidemic.
Sure. It goes all the way back to evolution, when humans were learning how to figure out what was food and what wasn't food. And one of the things that we learned as, a species is that the sweet flavor is good. The sweet flavor is food. And so we're hardwired to recognize it as something that's good. So that's just part of our wiring. But our ancient ancestors didn't have access to all, like right now, over 75% of our packaged foods have added sugar. So our ancestors didn't have access to this kind of sugar that we do now. And what happens to us now in our modern times is that we get, I don't want to use the word brainwashed, but we get conditioned as children to associate sugar with our self-worth and our self-esteem. Like think about this. When you're at the dinner table, you're a little kid. If you're good, you get ice cream.
Oh, you're right. I never thought of it that way.
If you're bad, you don't get dessert.
Wow.
And so we associate being good with eating sweets, and we associate being bad, punishment, no sugar.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, I never thought of it that way. And then I think about, a lot of us in midlife, we grew up 60s, 70s, 80s. I mean, 70s was big with the sugar cereals. I mean, I remember having cereal and pouring sugar on top of the sugar cereal.
Yes.
I remember having strawberries and dipping them in sugar and even making my own cinnamon toast sugar bread, like mixing cinnamon and sugar. It was part of for breakfast even.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. We were well above the 25 grams that we should be eating after about a half a bowl of cereal.
Yeah.
And that's just a couple of bites, that's not including what we're going to eat and drink for the rest of the day.
So how many people do you think struggle with hypoglycemia? And do you think that is a big culprit, or do you think it's just in general, we're having too much and it could be even creating that? What are your feelings on that? And I know you're not a doctor, but what's your experience knowing that you walked through that yourself? And when you look back now at your childhood or kids or even women in midlife, what are your thoughts around sugar and what's happening there?
Just based on my own experience, something like hypoglycemia, it is not everybody has it. So it can be a genetic tendency. I know that it's something that's pretty common in my family, just like diabetes can be part of your family genetics, a tendency toward it. But the lifestyle factors are they're going to artificially jack up and crash your blood sugar all day long based on what we're eating. So we're going to create states of hypoglycemia just by eating a sweet breakfast.
And just so you all know, if you eat or you give your kids mostly starchy sugar meal, what happens, especially if you don't have protein or fat with it, or if you make it worse, you add high fructose corn syrup or condensed sugar, lots of sugar. What happens is your body starts to secrete insulin to counter that. And your body plays this game with each other, like, okay, sugar is in blood. Now let's release insulin. Now we need more. So it goes in this up and down cycle where you start craving more, which is why if you eat gummy bears or just pasta, for example, even, you might be hungry an hour later wanting more sweets or more carbs, where if you were just to eat protein, for example, and fiber and fat, you wouldn't have that. You'd be full a lot earlier. And it's because of your body and your brain playing with this.
Exactly. It's such a roller coaster. And because we're not taught about this and we're just given sugar all of our lives, by the time you hit midlife and your estrogen levels and your progesterone levels decline, you start to feel the effects of a lifetime of high sugar consumption.
Now, the other thing that I understand that happens is when you are not feeling good in your own skin. So this is like either depressed or hormone swings. And this happened probably to you as a teenager. And then it happens again in perimenopause and midlife women. When we're not feeling good, our body is searching, our brain is searching for serotonin, it's searching for dopamine, it's searching for things. And sugar gives you that instant fix. So we start craving it even more.
Yeah, it's as addictive as cocaine because it hits the same brain chemicals.
So, okay, explain that a little more, because we've heard that, we've seen the meme, but explain how that seems so extreme, like to say sugar is as addictive as cocaine.
It is, but the reward chemicals, like dopamine or something, it is triggered by cocaine and it's triggered by sugar.
Yeah.
And so we get addicted to that feeling of reward.
So when we tell somebody just don't have sugar, what goes wrong?
What goes wrong is, especially if you have those deep psychological and emotional connections to it, it stirs up this feeling of like, no, you can't take that away from me. You can't punish me. I'm not bad. You can't touch that. Yeah. So we get really defensive, and that's what makes it super hard for people to give it up, even though they know that they need to.
And then we get mad at ourselves. It's more self-beat up. Like, what's wrong with me? I can't control. Why am I craving this?
Oh, God.
But when Kita says that, any of you listening that are struggling with sugar, when she says it's as addictive as cocaine, just think about that for a minute. You would not tell a drug addict, just don't do it. Or maybe some of you would, but I don't advise that. There's a lot more to that. Like, there's some work to be done to get them to not crave that, to not need that. It's not as simple as just don't do it. So when we tell somebody just don't have sugar, that's asking a lot.
It is asking a lot. I mean, your doctor might be the one telling you to just not do sugar, though, because, if you want to live, if you don't want to get Alzheimer's or heart disease or any of the other things that are looming in front of you, then you've got to take it seriously. But there's also all that psychological stuff that you have to get through. I don't know if I told you this before, but I'm writing a book on how to become sugar-proof for life.
So good. I can't wait to read that one. We all need that. And just before we get into like how and herbs, and I have a lot of questions for you. I want to ask about cortisol. There's so many things I want to ask you about with herbs, but when you say become sugar proof for life, can you just run down some of the reasons we don't want sugar in our life? Like, what is the problem? Because some people go, well, it's just sugar. Everything's bad for us. What are the problems that you see that come up with if we do not take this seriously?
Well, you're probably familiar with the study done by the American Heart Association that did extensive research on the causes of heart disease, brain disease, and all that stuff. And they came to a very groundbreaking conclusion that it wasn't fat like we had been told. It was sugar. Sugar has such a devastating effect on our brain, on our whole cardiovascular system. It is pro-inflammatory. I know we talk a lot about gut health. You mentioned it on your podcast a lot, but it has a very negative effect on your gut health. Just about every system and function of your body is negatively impacted by high sugar diets. And by high sugar diets, that's more than 25 grams of sugar a day for women. And that is not the amount of sugar that you're trying to shoot for. That's your maximum ceiling.
I just want you to realize when you pick up one of those sodas, there's more than 25 grams of sugar in that, like a lot more. So with this, or piece of cake, bowl of ice cream. So just when she's saying 25 grams a day, I just want you to understand, like, we're getting that in a half a drink, some people, or in your morning coffee, which I call candy. Now people do dump the sugar in the morning. So this is a serious topic here, and it is important. Now, not everyone is familiar with that study, Kita. So I want to just talk a little bit more on that. So for years and years and years, we were told fat is what causes heart disease, that dietary fat. That is not what the studies show now. What we're seeing is that high sugar consumption, high blood sugar is what's leading to a number of diseases, ranging from cancer to diabetes to heart disease to dementia, Alzheimer's, all of this related to high blood sugars. Now, if you're wondering if this is something you're navigating, just getting routine blood work, just by the way, if you check your A1C, it's your blood sugar over a 3-month period. And right there, you can see if you've got an issue there. If we're in the high 5s, 6, 7, we've got a problem. We've got a definite problem. Even if you're in the mid 5s, it's kind of a red flag. Like, let's look at getting this down. So your A1C can show that. And then when you see people wearing even continual glucose monitors, that little white thing on their arm, that's what they're checking is for blood sugar there. So sugar is and I think it'll come out more, especially with the current administration, more about the dangers of sugar. But I think we've avoided this topic for too long. Can you just touch on the differences in sugar? Because high fructose corn syrup, for example, is very different than even just table sugar or fructose that's in fruit. Could you just share a little bit about that? And where do you draw the line on avoiding? Like, do you have fruit? What are your feelings on that?
Whole, fresh unprocessed fruit is awesome. So eat it. It's great. I wouldn't eat it at bedtime if you tend to spike your blood sugar. So, or if you tend
even
to have
bananas and
sugar.
pineapple, she's saying whole fresh fruit is fine. Yep.
Yes. Dried fruit is super concentrated in sugar and it's missing the water. So that's not fine. But anything else, whether it's honey, like raw honey scooped right out of the hive, or, any kind of sugar at all, it's going to spike your blood sugar when you eat it. It might do, some might do it a little more slowly.
So, and I will say like some have medicinal benefits. So like if you are going to have a little bit of sugar and you choose like Manuka honey or something, you're going to at least get some benefit where you're not going to get that from just table sugar or pure high fructose corn syrup.
Right. And if you use it medicinally.
Yes.
Now that's where, it's kind of like the same as people do with medical marijuana and all that stuff. They're not using it medicinally, they're using it recreationally. So like Manuka honey, if you're eating it like a medicine, you're not going to be eating you're not going to be putting it on your toast and putting it all in your smoothie and all that stuff. You're just going to be having you're going to have a tiny bit therapeutically.
Yeah. Now, what's your strict avoid list? Do you strictly avoid high fructose corn syrup, I imagine?
I strictly avoid anything with added sugar.
Anything. Got it. What are your thoughts on artificial, like doing things, not even full, I know you're against artificial sweeteners, but like a stevia or a monk fruit. What do you feel about that?
I feel like you need to stay away from it. And I'll tell you why. And then I want to tell you a little, we'll just keep talking.
Yeah,
about
I know. No, I want to know why. This is important. I think we need to hear all the sides of this because people ask.
Yes. So, because a lot of stevia has been touted to be the good guy, but when you consume an artificial sugar, whether it's made from a plant or made in a factory, it is like your taste buds are perceiving the sweet flavor. It's sending that signal to your brain. Oh, glucose is on the way. So it's expecting glucose in your bloodstream. And then that bloodstream, that sugar is never delivered.
Yeah.
And so that increases your cravings.
That's right. Yep.
So you're going to want more.
So we saw this right away with aspartame and saccharin and things like that, but people put stevia and all of those into the natural category, monk fruit, but it still is going to do that. So if you are sensitive, you got to be really aware of that. You have to be really aware of that. You know, what's interesting too, Kita, sometimes people will try the sugar-free candies, even like that look more natural. And if you wear a continual glucose monitor, you'll see it still spiking your blood sugar. So it's very interesting. So it's still doing the effect.
And a lot of erythritol that just came out to be shown to, potentiate blood clots or something like that.
It hurts your gut too.
Oh, all of these hurt your gut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is that we are so habituated to the sweet flavor.
We are.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do we stop that? Talk to us about herbs here. Like, how do we, because you came up with something, and this is just one of your amazing miracles that you learned about and created, but how do we stop the sugar craving? Like, what do we do other than strict avoidance? Because we're like, okay, we need a strict avoid, but that's willpower.
Well, there is a remarkable herb that I learned about in herb school. It comes from India. The name of the herb is Gymnema sylvestre.
How do you spell that? How do you
J
or okay?
No, Gymnema.
Okay. And it comes from India. And how does that work?
It comes from India. The way it works is the leaves contain a compound called gymnemic acid, which when you hold it in your mouth, little molecule is similar in shape to the sugar molecule. So it binds to the sugar receptors on your tongue, but also in your small intestine where we also have sugar receptors.
Okay.
And so that's temporarily going to, in your tongue, it's going to block your perception of the sweet flavor. In your digestive tract, it may help to block some of the absorption of dietary sugars.
So it helps you not only okay, so wait, I want to make sure I understand this. So it makes you not receptive to the taste of sweet, and it blocks you absorbing it?
Yes.
Does it stop
your absorption? It's going to block some of it. It's not going to block all of it, especially the amount that you're consuming. It's not going to be a lot, but it is going to help. But on your tongue is where this is where it's going to be most impactful, because when you consume a tea that contains the herb gymnema and you swish it around in your mouth before you swallow, after you've consumed 3/4 to a full cup of that,
okay,
and then you eat something sweet, like you eat a cookie, you eat some chocolate bar or something. A chocolate bar is going to taste like a bar of wax.
Whoa. Okay. So me and my husband experimented wrong with this, but now I know.
Okay.
So as soon as I got your teas, we got the cortisol one and the sugar one, and I reached for the cortisol right away, which I'll talk about my experience in a few minutes on that one. But
Okay.
it definitely calms you. But he grabbed the sugar one because his big thing was every night either having some ice cream or having his big thing was Nutella. Like he loves to have that
Okay.
sweet. So he's like, I'm gonna do this. So he would steep it and drink it. And then he didn't have sugar. But I was asking, I'm like, does it make you not want the sugar? He's like, well, I haven't had it. But now, if I'm hearing you correctly, we
Right.
almost should try it because it's saying it's not going to taste the same.
Right. It's just like, it's not like I've seen a lot of people like just try to eat it afterwards. Just try it just to see how it works.
Yeah.
But I don't know the exact science of how this works, but it is believed to also send a signal to your brain that you don't want sugar, which is really different than those sugar substitutes,
Yes.
which is telling you that you do want sugar.
Yeah. And you're having like a cheap substitute instead. You're like, wait, this isn't the real thing.
Yeah. You didn't give me what you said. So,
well, I'll tell you, Brooks tried the sugar, tried the one for sugar, and he has not had sugar, but we haven't tried the sugar after, but he said he just didn't want it after. So I think there's definitely something
really
to
normal.
that.
Yeah.
So I would imagine the best time to do something like that then is like just whenever your body's naturally craving sugar. So like if you're a 3 in the afternoon person or whatever it is that you're craving it, or nighttime is when to do something like that, I would imagine.
Exactly. Before those danger times when you're typically craving sweets. And that means that you've got to, if you're not really sure and you kind of snack on it all day, it means that you have to start paying attention. And that's something that I really hope that, I can kind of convey this message, how important it is to pay attention to your body and pay attention to what you're doing. Because a lot of the trouble that we get ourselves into is that we're just not paying attention. We're not really sensitive to how our body is responding to things. So pay attention to when your cravings hit. And that if you know that like you always want a Starbucks on the way to work, or you always want to, when you're watching Netflix at night and you want to have a bowl of ice cream, that you want to drink it before that time. And when my kids were little, and one of my daughters had a wicked sweet tooth, and I said, okay, you can have all that you want. You have to have the gymnema first. Get all mad.
That's funny. Well, but ladies, listen, especially those of you waking up at 3 in the morning, which is definitely something I had navigated, that waking up at 3 in the morning, there's a lot of reasons that could be happening. But the most common reason that happens is because we're having too high of sugar and starch before bed or later in the day. And your body is then it's going to then get too low blood sugar as a rebound around 3 in the morning. And your body will start producing cortisol to wake you up, to raise your blood sugar, because cortisol will spike your blood sugar. So another reason to be looking at this herb and getting off of sugar is because if we are waking up at that 3 a.m., that will prevent that from happening.
Yeah, it's just going to help you be more stable. And that tea that I sent you guys has other herbs in it. And one of the herbs in there is cinnamon. And cinnamon has been shown to help to keep your blood sugar stable.
So it actually helps to lower it. Yeah.
Or at least stabilize it. Yeah, because that's really
that
important.
makes sense. So is there any contraindications to that herb? Like, is there anyone that should not take that? Or is there any negative side effects that someone would have from something like that?
There's always negative side effects to things. There's not enough research on children, under 12 or like pregnant women and nursing women. So we always recommend to, wait till after your baby's born and weaned before you have it. Don't give it to little kids just because there's not enough research, to establish the safety. I mean, sure. I gave it to my kids in small amounts, but I'm not recommending that people do that just because, until the science is there saying, yes, it's totally fine. The herb itself, according to the American Herbal Products Association, it's classified as class 1, generally regarded as safe, which means it's safe when used appropriately. However, if you are taking blood sugar lowering medications,
like metformin or something like that.
Yeah. If you're taking something that's already lowering your blood sugar and then you're going to drink a tea that may do the same, you might have your blood sugar might become dangerously low.
Yeah. So if you're on GLP ones, like the weight loss drug, which will lower, or if you're on metformin, this is not ideally something to add in. If that's you, if you're not on those things and you are wanting to stop sugar cravings, this would be more for you. That makes sense.
Yes. And also like if you have a pre-existing condition, like a liver condition or something like that, then, proceed with caution. But then, because the herb is non-toxic and is generally regarded as safe, bacon is not a safe thing to eat on a regular basis. Beer, just look at all the things that people are eating on a regular basis, and yet they're freaking out because a plant, like one person 30 years ago had this problem. So, you got to really look at it in context of what's realistic.
That makes sense.
If you're on medication or under a doctor's care, make sure to talk to them before you you use it. They might caution you against it. Or if they're, if you're on a diabetes medication, you may be able to work with them to lower your dose. But
you
want
know
to do
what I love
it with
about
your
you?
doctor.
You know what I love about you? You're giving us all the okay, you care so much, and I can tell because you're giving everybody all the possible. You're doing more in 2 minutes about the just, hey, listen to your body than pharmaceutical companies ever do on their big long, if you guys look at any pharmaceutical you're taking, there's pages and pages of that no one even reads. They're like, well, the FDA approved it, I'll just take it. But so I love that you're rattling these off. But chances are, y'all, most of you are not going to have any issue from this herb.
Right.
Okay, what about, okay, first of all, where do you get this herb? Can people just get it? Should they? Should they make their own tea with it? Why is it better a tea than a supplement? Help us with that. And by the way, spoiler alert, Kita has an amazing tea company we're going to talk about where she makes all this package. But I wanted to understand, can people even do this on their own? Can they get that herb?
Okay. All right. So you can probably get it on your own. We've had the hardest time getting it, just getting a steady supply of it. And something might be affecting the crop, but also supplement companies use it. So they buy it all up and then they powder it to use in their extracts and stuff.
Makes sense.
So it's not super easy to find. But the other thing is that if you don't know how to mix it into a tea, right, it tastes terrible. It tastes like shit.
Okay.
It's really, yeah. It
does not taste good
at all. No, it does not taste good on its own. So that when I blended the tea that it's in, the tea is called sugar proof. And when I blended it, I had to keep tweaking it and tweaking it to make sure that it works. You got to get all the benefits of it, but that you don't taste it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we don't want to take it. And then what happens when you take an herb and you just stuff it in a supplement? Are we getting the same benefits or how? Because I know with your tea, we got to steep it 20 minutes. So how does that, what's the comparison there?
Okay. So, I'll tell you why I recommend steeping that particular tea for 20 minutes. But in general, with the herb gymnema, if you're not drinking it, tasting it, ingesting it, chewing on it, just however, you're not going to get that sugar blocking effect on your tongue.
Explain that when you told, I didn't really understand that your tongue has receptors. So how does that work with your tongue?
Yeah. So our tongue, well, just, with the gymnema alone, it's filling in your sugar receptors so that you can't tempt it, lasts about 20 minutes or so, but you won't be able to taste the sweet flavor. And that's long enough to get past a craving. But for other things, our tongues are we have all these little nerves and sensors that go right to our brain, and it's giving our brain lots of information. All the chemicals and compounds that are in plants, they are providing information to our bodies. And sometimes the information is in the form of a signal, all right, like the bitter compound, something that's bitter. People hate the bitter flavor, but it does so much good for your entire digestive whole cascade. And I'll use that as the example. When your tongue perceives the bitter flavor, it sends a signal to every part of your digestive tract to start secreting digestive fluids. So you're going to start to secrete saliva, which is, got the enzymes to break down your food. Your stomach is going to secrete, all the digestive juices, your pancreas, your liver, your gallbladder. It's all going to be secreting so that when you eat, if you take something bitter about 15 to 30 minutes before you eat, your digestion is primed and ready to really extract the nutrients from your food in a much more powerful way than if you don't use something like that. If you have a bitter green salad and then you drown it in ranch, you're going to be losing out on that benefit. But if you taste it, a bitter green salad with a light vinaigrette or something, then you're going to get that benefit. Or if you drink some tea that has a little bit of bitterness before your meal, you're going to get that benefit. But there's other things too, like certain herbs that have a sedative effect. You're getting information that's telling your body, all right, time to relax now.
Is that what's going on in the cortisol one?
There's a couple of different things that are going on with the cortisol. We blended two types of herbs. Well, the daytime and the nighttime are two different ones. And
well, let's talk about cortisol for a minute. So explain to me why cortisol became important to address. Explain. I mean, I think I understand the whole cortisol sugar connection, but if you could help with listeners, what is the connection there and why was addressing cortisol important for you to figure out?
Well, cortisol is really important because in midlife, not only are estrogen and progesterone getting nothing is working as it used to because our hormone levels are declining, but also our cortisone cycle is changing too, which is going to affect our sleep. It affects gut. It can exacerbate the effects of a high sugar diet. So just stress.
So cortisol is a hormone, and cortisol in healthy pre-perimenopause, ideally it should rise in the morning, it should wake us up, and it should slowly decrease during the day. And then we start producing melatonin, we fall asleep. That's how cortisol should work.
Right.
And cortisol should spike if we were to go back hundreds of years in danger or in urgency or in times of stress. So it would be maybe once a day or once a week. It was not an ongoing thing. In modern world, with all of the electronics and emails and just everything happening, we tend to spike all day long, like constantly. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
And when we are spiking cortisol all day long, we are in a heightened state of stress, which will lead to increased belly fat, will start affecting our mood, our energy, our sleep, all types of things, and can lead to disease too.
Oh, absolutely, because it lowers your immune function. So both sugar and stress are going to negatively impact your immune function, like very seriously. So things like cancer and, all the other diseases can really have a much more devastating effect on our body if we don't get it under control.
So what happens is many of us hear stress kills. I mean, me included in this, like, hey, Natalie, got to get your cortisol under control. But what then goes to our heads, a lot of us is, oh, well, you must meditate. And some of us can't. Some of us like really struggle with that. So help us here, because what we'll hear is either pharmaceuticals, which many of us don't want to do that. How do herbs help with this, and what herbs specifically?
Okay. Before I jump into that, I just want to say something about stress too, is like, there's a lot of people that say, well, I don't feel stressed at all. Like my life is great. My life is calm, but it's not just emotional stress. It's heat stress. It's, you go outside and it's, 10 below zero, that's stress. If I live in Arizona, you live in Arizona, you go outside in the summertime, that's stress.
Yep. Oh yeah. Every day.
Yeah. If you work out improperly, like you overstress your body by working out, that's stress.
Yep. And this is a key one, because that's I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of women with the weight gain and midlife changes, they think I just need to work out harder. I need to work out more intense. And the harder and more intense we work out, we're creating oxidative stress, and we are also raising cortisol there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, everything has to change in midlife, but we created 2 teas for cortisol, and I'll talk about the 2 different ones. Let's talk about the one that you like, the evening one.
Yep.
It's a blend of 3 herbs that are nervines. Nervines are herbs that they nourish and relax your nervous system.
So what do you mean nervines? Like NERVE, nerve, or something else?
NERVINE. It's like herbs, the way they behave, they're categorized in certain ways based on their action. There's nervines, there's bitters, there's aromatics. Aromatics are, if you see an herb that says it's an aromatic and you're an herbalist, you're going to infer that it's going to help to reduce gas in your digestive system.
Got it. Okay.
Okay.
That's
So,
cool.
and nervines, like there's different types of nervines too. There's stimulating nervines like caffeine.
Okay.
But
so
then
there's different
relaxing
spectrums, whether they raise you up or bring you down.
So we use a relaxing nervine and a nourishing nervine.
Okay.
And you're going to feel the effects of this a little quicker. Like it's going to help you to feel the effects, the benefits of it. And then we also added an herb that's an adaptogen, which is a very specific type of herb that helps to protect your body against the negative effects of stress. That herb is called ashwagandha. And that's been in the press a lot. You've probably heard of it, right?
Yes. Okay. Let me back up a minute, because I want to make sure we're all following here. You just said adaptogen. What does adaptogen mean? Many people use that word, but a lot of people don't know what that means. What is that, first of all? And then I'm going to ask about ashwagandha.
Okay, so adaptogens were first discovered in Siberia, where you may have heard of Siberian ginseng.
Yep.
Its proper name is Eleutherococcus senticosus. And it was heavily researched, and they discovered that it has a unique ability to protect your body against the negative effects of stress. They did this massive study throughout Europe, like thousands and thousands of people. And they concluded that all types of stress, it protected their body against.
Wow.
So, whether it's weather, whether it's hard working conditions, whether it's emotional stress, they were just overall protected.
Okay.
And there aren't a lot of herbs that are classified as a nervine, because they have to meet a few different criteria, such as it has to be very safe and non-toxic when used in normal doses. It has to have a non-specific beneficial effect on your body. So it's like some herbs are just going to target your digestive system, but adaptogens tend to have an overall beneficial effect.
Okay. It just seems like a lot of supplements these days, it just says adaptogen, and we're like, people are like, what does that even mean? So it's why I wanted to understand.
So that's what it means. It's protecting your body against stress. And So in order for it to qualify as an adaptogen, it has to meet those criteria. And ashwagandha is one of those herbs that is like that. And so they have studied ashwagandha and found that when you use it regularly for like 60 days or so, that it can lower your cortisol by 28 to 30%.
That's pretty significant.
It's significant, but because you may not feel the effects of it right away. If your body's really sensitive, you may feel it.
I feel everything. I mean, I feel everything. So that's probably why when I had the tea, I was like right away, I was like, oh wow, that really does calm you. So when you
the nervines, you're feeling the effect of those. You're going to get that nerve nourishment right away. Like that contains an herb called skullcap, and skullcap. Even like if you think about the name of it, it's named for the flower, just the shape of it looked like a monk's cowl kind of. But it has this effect on your nerves that it is calming. It eases like when you're tense and stressed like that, your nerves are jangling and you're jumpy, like if a door slams and you're just like jumping. So it helps to just release all that tension.
I would imagine it would help too for people that are relying on things like Xanax or like for anxiety. I would imagine this is an option too, because the reason it pretty instantly calms too, is it partly because the way that it's served in a tea, so the tongue receptor thing, is that also part of it versus a pill?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
It is more immediate in its effect. And then there's another herb in there called oat straw, which it's the same plant that makes oatmeal, but we're using the grass instead of the part that makes the grain. And it's a nourishing nervine. It's not like a relaxing one. It's more like it nourishes your nerves. There's been studies that show that it might increase GABA in the brain.
Okay.
Now,
GABA is the feel good in your brain. It's a feel good in your brain. So
well, skullcap as well, but there's promise that's one of the ways that it's helping. And so people use it for things like depression, stress, but it's very fortifying. And, in herb school, I also learned that it has a fortifying effect on the myelin sheath of your nerves. And the myelin sheath is that it's like with an electrical wire, there's a layer of insulation around it. And the myelin sheath is like the insulator around the nerves.
Okay. I have a question before I get too far, because this is, gosh, I'm such a curious person, and I interview so many people about different methods, and I find myself getting confused too. So I can only imagine how my audience might feel sometimes. Sometimes we get confused on like, is it a supplement? Is it just food? Is it herbs? Is it peptides? Like there's so many different directions to go. Can you give me just a little bit, and I'm going to ask you deeper on some of the herb questions, but how does you or other herbalists, what is their thought process on herbs instead of like pharmaceutical or strict food? Like help us understand that. Cause we could talk to our mutual friend, Allison. She was trained homeopathy, right? That's like one way. Then you got some people trained pharmaceutical, some people trained herbs, there's so many different routes. Can you just tell me the thought process on an herbalist?
Yeah. And I can't really speak for any other herbalist, just, because everybody's got their own approach and understanding. But my understanding is this: if you have to be on a critical medication, such as, you had your thyroid removed, you have to be on thyroid medication. There's no herb that's going to substitute that.
Totally.
If you're
or insulin you're a type 1 diabetic, you need insulin. Yes.
You have to have that. If you've had heart surgery, there's critical medication that just, you're not going to substitute that with the plant. So don't even try to do that. Just, take the advantages of modern medicine and use that. And yes, herbs can't substitute for certain things. Like, probiotic. I had a woman message me on social media about what tea can I take instead of a probiotic. It's like, you can't.
Right.
Because there may be probiotics in the tea, but probiotics are like billions of these little beneficial bacteria. You're not going to get billions in a cup of tea. You're going to get a few.
We're not even going to get that from a fermented food. Yeah. So we have to do something there. Yeah.
Right. But the difference is that with the teas, with the herbal teas, you're getting benefits that you're not going to get anywhere else. You're getting advantages that you're not going to get with anything else, especially when it comes to certain things where like some herbs are like just so profoundly effective, like nourishing your nervous system. Okay, there's, foods that have tryptophan in there and stuff. They're going to help. But if you drink a tea like that cortisol evening tea, you're not going to find those compounds in your food.
So I'm just starting to learn about herbs from your perspective. Like it's opening up, but I realize I've been taking herbs in things for years. I guess my thought process is, especially for those more in the natural camp, they want to stick to natural. This would be the closest thing to food. I mean, it's things that you eat, things that you consume. So to me, and it grows in nature. So to me, I love this as like a first line of like, let's start here.
I love that you said that so much, Natalie, because that's how I feel like too, is if you're in tune with your body, you're working on your food, you're moving your body. And then the teas and the herbs are such a great way to nourish, to augment your healthy lifestyle, to tweak the things that are like, they're not life-threatening. They're not like critical health conditions. You're going to help with inflammation. You're going to be less bloated. You're going to do stuff to just make your everyday life better. And you might not ever get to that point of having to have surgeries and stuff if you're taking care of yourself with food, with herbs.
I'm even thinking of things like, okay, so like I've been teaching about using berberine for years. Like I tell people in my programs, and one of my dear friends sells a sugar fixer, product for it's berberine. Actually, two of my friends have a product for that. But as I'm listening to you, I'm like, okay, I see the place for berberine, but why even go there? Like, why would we instead not do this, like what you're talking about with your tea, for example, and just avoid it altogether? So like, it's just going back steps. It's just, and I like that. It's like going to the root. So instead of saying like, if you go to the extreme, okay, I've got high blood sugar, so I'm going to take a pharmaceutical. That's maybe metformin or whatever. Fine. But the step before that is, okay, with my meals, let me take berberine. Okay. But the step before that is, let's not even have the sugar. And how do we do that? It's the herb. So it's like that elementary step, right? So to me, it just makes sense. Like, why not start with that?
Why not? And why not really start incorporating it into your life? I want to share something that you might not know about berberine that you might find interesting.
Okay.
Berberine is an alkaloid that's found in the roots of some of our most popular medicinal plants, like golden seal and barberry. The Latin name is berberis because of the berberine.
Yep.
And that has a blood sugar lowering capacity to it.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So now you know. Now you know where
that's
berberine
awesome.
comes from. Yeah. Yeah. There's an herb that grows up north in Arizona that the root contains a lot of berberine.
That's wild. Okay. Yeah. How does your daytime, I haven't tried the daytime cortisol one yet. How is that different? And would that make you sleepy the way the evening one can?
No, it's a different mix of herbs. One of the herbs in there that gives it like a nice flavor, it's rooibos. And rooibos is, are you familiar with rooibos tea?
No.
It is similar in benefit to green tea, except it has no caffeine. It comes from South Africa and it has a lot of antioxidants in it. And it's in there because not only because it tastes nice, but because it's so antioxidant, it can relieve some of the oxidative stress on your body.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Got it. So you got antioxidant. That's what that means. So you're going against oxidative stress. It's the opposite of that. Okay. So when I'm connecting a lot of dots here. My second book was called Aging in Reverse. I don't love that title now, but that was my second book. And I did a lot of herbs in food. Like, so thinking of like when you say herbs and spices, and I remember looking and researching medicinal benefits of those, but I'm just connecting the dots that this is like a whole nother layer that I wasn't even considering with teas. So this is really informative. I want to ask you about some other herbs, but before I keep going, I just want to mention, if those of you that are like piquing your interest, as Kita said, you can experiment with finding herbs yourself or even finding supplements. But my advice is I'm drinking one of her teas right now as we're talking. She makes teas. She has a company. It's called Loose Leaf is her brand. And
Loose Leaf Tea Market.
Yep. Loose Leaf Tea Market. And I'm going to link all this up. And she's got some brilliant teas and they taste good. And the other cool thing that she does is they're not in those toxic tea bags. Like, so it's all loose leaf. Can you just explain it for a quick second? Like why loose leaf versus when we buy something already in a tea bag?
Absolutely. Yeah. Loose leaf tea is the gold standard of tea because when tea comes in a tea bag, first you have to look at the material of the tea bag. What is it made out of? Is it made out of is it made out of paper, chemical-free paper, or does it have plastic fibers in it? And a lot of companies, they're starting to do it less now.
Yes,
now
that
there was a big study. Yeah, a big study came out from the UK in I think 2019 that just blew open how many microplastics were in tea bags. So a lot of tea companies were like, oh shit, I've got to clean this up now. So you have to be careful what those tea bags are made out of so you're not getting microplastics. Plus, they grind the tea leaves, herbs, spices, whatever, super fine in order to, so it's not going to poke holes in your tea bag.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and yours tastes really good. So you figured out some awesome Spidey sense formula there because they taste really good. If you go to their website, and it's looseleafteamarket.com. If you want a discount, there's two ways to get it. You can either put /discount /Natalie Jill. Or if you just go to their website, even there is a little discount thing that pops up. So whether you go through my name or you just go to their website. I found that yesterday. There's a 15% off at least, so you can try. The first time I sent somebody there, they said, "Oh, I want to try all these." When me and my husband were trying them, and her comment was, "Wow, these are pricey." And I said, and they're not though when you know the benefits. But can you say what you said to that, Keto, when I said they're pricey?
Yeah. Is the tea pricey? Diabetes is pricey.
That's right.
Heart disease is pricey. Alzheimer's is pricey.
And they're not that pricey, by the way. Yes. Are they more expensive than like Lipton tea at your at the store? Yes, but there's a reason. It's not it's not made the same. It's not that.
Right. It's less than $1 per serving.
Yeah. So there you go.
Like go to Starbucks. Nobody complains about Starbucks.
No.
That's like what, $6, $7, $8 for a thing.
But regardless, you can try one with 15% off. So it's either looseleafteamarket.com/discount/Natalie Jill, or just if you just go to their website, a little pop-up comes up with a 15%. So either way, just happy for you to try it. Yeah. Okay, what did I miss here? Because I only tried the cortisol and the sugar, but can you talk to us about a few other herbs that are relevant to midlife and why you decided to put those in tea? Just so we
absolutely. Well, there's just so many herbs that are important. Like we make another tea for inflammation that has herbs that are anti-inflammatory and also cooling to your body. One of our teas is called Inflammation Relief, and it's made with another adaptogenic herb called Tulsi, which also known as holy basil, and that's anti-inflammatory, but it also has a beneficial effect on your mind and on your nervous system. So that's an important one. And then we threw some important cooling herbs in there, like chrysanthemum. And chrysanthemum is an important herb in traditional Chinese medicine because of its cooling effect on the body. And when I say cooling effect, I don't mean that you're going to drink it and then you're going to just get cold. Inflammation is heat.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Inflammation is heat. Explain that.
Yeah. The hallmarks of inflammation, there's 4 hallmarks of inflammation: heat, redness, pain, and swelling.
Okay.
Okay. So if you start to disperse that heat, if it cools the body, then you're like, they use it as an anti-aging herb because too much heat too much inflammation has such a devastating effect on your whole body.
Wait, hold on. I'm just having a whole aha moment here on something. Maybe I'm stretching this. I don't know. But when we have hot flashes in midlife and it's your body's trying to cool itself because of the drop in estrogen, is that creating inflammation too? Are those hot flashes themselves part of inflammation? Or
Not that I know of. I have heard, and this is more of an Eastern philosophy. So I don't know what science is behind it. It's just something like, as an herbalist, I've heard that because estrogen is stored in our fat, one of the trains of thought is that the hot flashes happen to release stored estrogen.
Wow. Okay.
And so that we can access it more. Like, I don't know.
That's an interesting thought process. Well, I've heard, and I've never really quite figured, I mean, obviously I know the benefits of decline. I know the negatives of declining estrogen, but I've also heard that hot flashes are detrimental on our health. So I was just, as you said that, I was like, wait a minute, I wonder if there's something with that and why it's bad for our health. So it was just a thought, which would then, I'm jumping the gun here, but I'm like, I wonder if that herb would also help with hot flashes too. So I don't know.
It does. Yeah.
Okay. So maybe I'm right in my little hypothesis.
Yeah. Anything that's cooling, like rose petals is another tea that's cooling, and it's used pretty extensively in India as a cooling herb. So it's great for women in midlife because we don't have the estrogen, we're feeling so much more inflammation like that. Everything hurts once once you pass that menopausal gateway, everything hurts.
Yeah.
And so if you start taking anti-inflammatory herbs and you're moving your body like at least 20 minutes of moderate exercise a day, and you're not eating pro-inflammatory foods like sugar, which is so pro-inflammatory, then you're setting yourself up for success.
Makes sense. So I just want to touch, I know we didn't really get into gut health there. I've done so many episodes on gut health, but you had mentioned there's some herbs that are ideal for gut health. Can you touch on what those are?
Yeah, well, there's different herbs that have different actions on gut health. Like we talked about the effect of bitter herbs, like something like dandelion root. Okay. I use that in a lot of our teas. Like one of the teas, Sleek and Slender, it has that herb gymnema in much smaller quantities, but it'll still, like, it helps with the sugar cravings. It helps to boost your metabolism, but also helps to really improve your digestion through a couple of different mechanisms. One of them is it has dandelion root that really supports your liver because it has that bitterness.
Does it help with bloating too? I've heard that dandelion root can help with water retention.
That's dandelion leaf.
Okay, got it. Different.
More so. Dandelion root has more of an affinity with the liver. Dandelion leaf has more of an affinity with the kidneys. Even though they both benefit, like dandelion leaf is more bitter than the root. And so you're going to get liver benefits, and dandelion root is going to benefit the kidneys too. But it's just like each one has a little bit more strong suit with those two separate organs. So that tea also has aromatic herbs, and the aromatic herbs, I just touched on it briefly, but what they do is they help to relieve gas and bloating in your digestive system. So if you eat a really big meal and then you drink a tea that has something like peppermint or fennel, chamomile has that, lavender, cinnamon, cardamom, the things that are in chai, they're going to help to ease bloating. They help to relieve trapped gas. Yeah. The herbal, remember I told you we have herbal action words, and the herb, that the name for that is carminative, and that means to sing. And that's referring to, you know, when you have little toots, it'll help you have toots.
Okay. Wait, which one is this again? Say that, or we all need that for probably our spouses.
Oh yeah, it's the aromatic herbs, and that's more of like a class of herbs. Like anything that when you open it up and you smell it, like peppermint is very aromatic. Ginger is aromatic. Cardamom, cinnamon, all those ones. Those are essential oils that are in that plant naturally. And when you smell it, you know, okay, this is an aromatic, and it's going to help my tummy.
Okay, this is a completely different question, but I'm just curious now that you just brought that up. When people talk, because there's a whole nother, I didn't even mention essential oils when people talk about that. I don't know much about them, but is that the oil from a lot of these herbs? Is that what that is? So it's kind of like, is it linking it the same way, or is it trying to?
Well, essential oils are extracted from the herbs, usually by steam distillation, but sometimes through other means, like with citrus, the peels are cold pressed, but they're highly concentrated volatile substances. And there was a period of time when people were drinking essential oils, and it's just, it is just not a safe practice. As an herbalist, like just step away. That is not how they're intended to be used. In Europe, they have developed protocols that are safe, but it's not like you put 3 or 4 drops of lemon oil in your water. That's insanity. That can really like mess up your esophagus and your stomach lining. Yeah, people just don't know, and they need to know that.
I see people doing that all the time. They'll drop like rose oil, or they'll drop like they're doing that in their stuff. Yeah.
No, because essential oils are super, super, super concentrated. So 1 drop in like a teaspoon of carrier oil, like olive oil or coconut oil or something, and you rub it onto your skin, it's absorbed into your skin. It's getting into your body. You don't have to ingest it. Yeah. It's getting into you. When you smell it, it's getting into you because those little molecules have entered into your body.
Well, this is fascinating, Kita. Okay, I'm going to add in the sugar one. What was that one called again? The one that Brooks has been drinking. It's sugar.
Sugar proof.
Sugar proof. Okay. I think all of us women need to be really looking at sugar proof, especially because of all these dangerous problems with sugar. And I love this idea of being able to totally avoid. And then the cortisol one is the nighttime I've been doing. I'm going to start adding in the day, and I'll have to report back on how that's feeling. So y'all, if you want to check this out, it's looseleafteamarket.com/discount/Natalie Jill. If you want to get a discount, or just go to their main website and a pop-up will come up the first time you're there with a 15%. I'll also link up Kita's company Instagram and website in the show notes. Thank you so much, Kita. This was super informative. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
Yay, well, it's such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.